Hi there, my name is Clarissa, and I just turned 19. I might not be your regular teenager, but I guess we have one thing in common. Yeah, we both love this channel. After dragging my feet for a while, I think it's time to share my own story. But first, subscribe to this channel and like this video. If you don't, try not to look under your bed tonight. Okay, enough with the chit-chat. Let me start with a question. Do you feel happy when you think of getting together with your parents? Or do you wish they could stay away longer or even forever? For me, I would choose the latter 1,000,000 times over. So, I was born into a seemingly happy family of a rich dad and a beautiful mom. But unlike most parents, my parents didn't get married because they truly loved each other. It was more based on their selfish needs. My dad's wealth was what attracted my mom to him, and my dad went after her because he wanted to prove that he could marry whoever he wanted. Just because. Everything was pretty smooth sailing at first, until the unexpected happened. I was 12 when my dad suddenly lost his job. Not that he was fired, but the company ran into a lot of debts and had to fold. He got another job, but it didn't pay so much as his former job. We had to cut back on many expenses to cope with the new change, but that didn't make my mom very happy. My happy home transformed from a peaceful, money-spending one into one that survived paycheck to paycheck with constant quarrels. Every day I would hear things like, "What do you mean I can't go to Barbados this weekend?" And, "You're such a demanding, selfish wife." I didn't mind so much until I started to see a side to them that I never knew existed. First, they became so self-centered that even though they said they loved me, they still ended up putting their own needs first. They were so unsympathetic, even concerning the issues that they were a cause of. Once, they had stayed up all night on the eve of my 14th birthday, yelling at each other. I was used to this, but it lasted till morning, and they didn't even wish me a happy birthday. I got mad and complained, but they said that their problems were worse than mine. Of course, I felt bad, but I just told myself they were having a bad day or something. Yeah, it made me feel better. Before I continue, remember I told you they lived like they hated each other? But when it came to me, it was like they saw it as a chance to dump all their frustrations on me. I knew their attitude towards me was toxic, but I also didn't want them to end up getting a divorce or something. But it kept getting worse. It was their wedding anniversary, and I saw it as a chance to get them closer. I looked up some romantic ideas on the internet, and I got to work. I spent most of the day cleaning and preparing a nice dinner. I even got some candles and rose petals. I had hoped that when they saw this, they would see that we don't need a lot of money to be a happy family. But it turned out to be a complete waste of my time. They pretended not to notice the changes around the house and spent the whole of dinner criticizing the meal. I told them I took all this effort for their anniversary, but they laughed and said, "This is the silliest idea we've heard all week, Clarissa." Nothing I did was ever enough for them. One time, I had a B+ in my exams in the 8th grade. It was the most stressful term, as all the times I wanted to read at night, their fighting distracted me. I was happy I didn't fail, but when I showed them my results, my mom rolled her eyes while my dad said, "This isn't good enough. We only want to see A+ every time." So when my friend from school invited me to her pool party the next term, I just had to lie that we were visiting the suburbs that same day. Don't judge me. You don't expect me to tell her that my parents had found a way of manipulating me into believing that hanging out with my friends was why I had a B+ the last term? Yeah, exactly. Now we're both on the same page. Through all of this, I found a way of coping until one day. You see, it was supposed to be a special day for me, but they ruined it. It was my 15th birthday, and I just got straight A's too. I couldn't wait to show my parents my grades with the hope that I could finally get their approval. That, for me, was going to be the best birthday gift, but I had something else coming. I went to my parents' room to show them my grades, and just as I was about to knock, I heard my mom telling my dad that she never would have stayed longer in the marriage if I didn't come along. My dad also dished out his part and said, "If not for Clarissa's birth, I would have known I needed a career change a long time ago." Instead of throwing their words at each other, they chose to blame all their problems on me and concluded they might file for a divorce. I felt a sudden rage and I knew that I had finally had enough. I grabbed the cash I had saved up and I sneaked out. I didn't know where I would go at first, but I also wanted to get away from them. So I took a cab to the nearest orphanage. The orphanage didn't want to take me because I was 15, but I told them I had nowhere else to go. They said I could stay, but I would have to leave once I turned 18. I gave them a fake surname just in case they wanted to do a background check on me. I got rid of my phone in case my parents or anyone from school wanted to reach me. The orphanage was nothing like home. But the good thing was, I was free from constant quarrels. There were a few teenagers like me and a lot of babies. They had a lot of rules though, and one of them included cutting my hair to save money on maintenance. The caregiver said, "Don't worry, it would all grow back before you turn 18. I got to like my new look even though I looked different. There were always chores to do, and since I loved to cook, I was always assigned to the kitchen. It was like an adventure at first, but it got quite tiresome. The caregivers seemed nice at first to me, but one day, they weren't as nice. I walked into the kitchen to make lunch, and they told me how special I was, and how they liked my cooking. It felt good, but immediately, when I turned my back, I heard one of them say to the other, "She must think she's some chef or something, always trying to impress everyone." It wasn't supposed to bother me since they never said anything rude to my face, but the truth is, I had developed low self-esteem from living with my toxic parents, and I didn't notice until now. I went to the same high school with the other orphan teens. The school wasn't as cool as my former one, but it felt good to not be pressured to have straight A's in all my classes. There was also this girl in my class who never liked me from the first day I stepped in. I never knew what the deal was with her, but she was always looking for ways to make me look stupid. She got her chance one day when I was coming out of the female toilet and I bumped into her. She almost screamed because she first thought I was a boy. Then she said, "Oh, it's you. You shouldn't have cut your hair." It was clear it was intentional. The others standing around started to laugh. But then Miss Lane, the school counselor, was passing by, and she shut them up. Since that day, Miss Lane tried to get close to me on many occasions, but I always told her to back off. I hated that she was always trying to advise me on schoolwork or how I related with my classmates. She might not have meant any harm, but I saw it as a reminder that I wasn't ever going to do anything right. But she was stubborn, and we ended up as friends. We became so close that I soon started seeing her like the mother I never had, or something like that. I mean, she always listened to my rants about school and the orphanage without judging me. I didn't dare to tell her about my parents yet, though. I was in my final year of high school when the orphanage told me it was time to leave. They said I needed to make space for the next abandoned child out there. Miss Lane took me in and looked after me until I was done with my finals. I wanted to go to college, but there wasn't enough money. Her salary barely fed us 3 meals a day. So I decided to apply as a junior chef at a Mexican restaurant in a nearby city. Miss Lane said she had a cousin there that I could stay with, and she wrote down the address for me. But my cell phone died immediately when I got off the train. All I had was the address, but I didn't know how to get there. I was wondering what to do when I bumped into a guy. He looked like he was in his early 30s, and I was about to apologize when he apologized first and asked me if I was lost. It was getting late, and my interview at the restaurant was the next morning, so I showed him the address, and he offered to drive me there. He was quite friendly, and we spoke as though we had met before. He said his name was Jake. I told him why I came to the city, but I noticed that he moved uncomfortably and changed the subject. After he dropped me at the address, he wished me luck and drove off. Miss Lane's cousin was relieved when she saw me. She had been trying to reach me and feared I was lost or something. Anyways, I had a nice dinner and went to bed anxious for my interview the next day. At the restaurant, the senior chef asked me to prepare a dish as the first part of the interview. I didn't know many dishes, but I had gotten some ideas from YouTube, so I whipped up something. Just as it was time for her and the other chefs to taste it, the manager came into the kitchen and said, "I would like to be a part of the interview today." I almost shit my pants. No, not because the manager wanted to taste my dish, but because it was Jake. He tasted my dish and immediately told me I was hired. The senior chef tried to explain that they weren't done with the interview, but he insisted. I could tell that she wasn't happy. For the few days that followed, she spent more time complaining about everything I did than mentoring me. Once, she told me to prepare a dish I had never heard of before. I did my best, but she said, "You're never going to last here. You're not good enough." The words cut through me like a knife, and a sudden rage shot through me. I called her names, and I told her she wasn't even a great chef anyway. She first looked surprised, then she smirked. Apparently, Jake had heard everything I said. Right in front of everyone, he scolded me. I tried to explain what had happened, but he cut me off with a final warning and left. But the senior chef didn't stop there. She decided to bring up another situation to make Jake question if he had made a wrong decision. Once, Jake asked me to work with the senior chef on a signature dish for the restaurant. I had a couple of ideas and I wrote them down. When it was time to meet with Jake, I couldn't find the book where I had written the ideas. Lucky for me, I knew them by heart, so I left for the meeting. I was halfway in when I heard the senior chef read off all my ideas to Jake. He was so impressed and said, "Bravo! I hope Clarissa has more ideas for us." I was so angry, but since I had no proof of the ideas being mine, I just lied that I didn't have any ideas to share. The days that followed, the senior chef made fun of me. But whenever she said something toxic, I chose to filter her words in my head. It worked, but she had more plans. A notable food critic was coming to the restaurant, and her evaluations were either going to make or destroy the restaurant. But there was a problem. We didn't have all the ingredients for the dish the food critic was coming to evaluate. The senior chef made matters worse by assigning me to the dish. I did my best, but just as it was time for Jake to come taste the dish, she sent me to get her something from the storage. When I returned, Jake was upset and said, "This can get you fired. I hired you because I thought you were great, not to ruin my restaurant." Then he asked me to try the dish. It was too salty. It wasn't that way when I left. I knew it was the senior chef, but I couldn't accuse anyone in the heat of the moment, so I just had to begin again. Everything went fine, but I knew I was already in Jake's black book. Since I couldn't complain about anything, I decided to quit. But thank God I first informed Miss Lane of my decision on the phone. When I told her I was going to quit, she pressed further, and that was how I told her about my parents. I expected her to get angry that I had kept it away from her for so long, but she said, "You might not have been able to choose your parents or the people around you, but you can choose how you react to their toxicity." The words illuminated me. So I confronted the senior chef the next day and asked her why she didn't like me. She said a lot of things, and that she was the one who spoiled the dish I prepared. She ended by saying, "You want to be the manager's favorite? Well, no one can take that position from me." She was a total jerk. The next time Jake was around, I told him everything and I had a recording to back me up. Jake was mad, of course, and placed the senior chef on probation. The other junior chefs saw me as their hero, as they had also gone through the same ordeal, but they never had the guts to speak up. Of course, things got better, and I even became good friends with Jake. Maybe it was fate that finally smiled on me, but I'm glad that despite not getting the kind of attention and approval I craved for from my parents, I have learned to prioritize my own happiness, and this has boosted my self-esteem. Now that I was fully confident, I went to see my parents. I wanted to know if they ever looked for me, or probably got divorced. They weren't divorced, but they hadn't changed either. Immediately as they saw me, they started yelling at me and saying, "You don't deserve us! Do you know how worried we were?" The old me would have felt bad, but I told them they don't deserve me either, and we hugged each other. I don't know if I'll still be visiting them again, but I wished I had done this earlier or even spoken up before things got this far. But I guess it took a while for me to accept that no one has the right to mess with my mental health. Not my parents, not anyone. Cheers to freedom.
Hey, Peekaboo! Have your bath quickly before someone comes.
We had our bath and dried ourselves as fast as we could before running out of the restaurant. Once we got to a safe zone, we started laughing, so happy that we hadn't been caught this time. The last time was so embarrassing. The security man didn't even let us finish up. Thankfully, he had the courtesy to call a female security officer who was even more ruthless than he was. We were forced to put our clothes back on despite the fact that our bodies were still filled with soap. We bowed our heads as we were dragged out of the restaurant, our faces still covered in soap lather. After that, we avoided taking baths for a couple of weeks till today. "We smell so fresh," I giggled. This was our life now, sleeping under egg cartons and sneaking into neat restaurants when no one was looking to have our baths. It wasn't always like this, though. We used to be quite comfortable. My dad was a lawyer, and his company rewarded him greatly. Unfortunately, he was hit by a stroke and we lost him. My mother couldn't pay for our house and our survival with the tiny revenue we got from her shop, and just like that, we started sleeping in my mom's shop. But when her landlord noticed this, he sent her packing also. We had no option but to move to the streets after trying the shelters and figuring out that they were all filled up.
Earth to Peekaboo!
My mom said, releasing me from my sad thoughts.
Guess what?
She asked. What? I asked, rubbing my bare foot on the tarred floor.
I got a real job. Ah!
We both screamed and jumped around.
But that's not even all.
There's more?
Yes, there's more.
Well, don't keep me waiting. What is it? I squealed.
This job comes with free accommodation. Ah!
We squealed again. Can we leave now?
Immediately.
My mom squealed. I packed the little I had, which was almost nothing, and followed my mother, kissing the egg carton that had kept me warm for a year goodbye. As we ran off, I noticed that some homeless people there were giving us the bad eye. They were obviously not happy that our lives had become better. I felt bad for them, but we obviously couldn't take them along with us. I waved at them, but no one waved back. I tried waving again, but my mother dragged me off. We got to our new quarters, and there were just 2 tiny beds in the room. It was more than comfortable for us. Better than sleeping on the hard street floor. Mom resumed her cleaning duties at the law firm that employed her the next day, while I stayed at home because I couldn't go to school. I spent my days reading all the books that I could lay my hands on in the library, and sometimes I helped my mother with her cleaning work. This was our life for 4 years until one day, when my mom mistakenly bumped into a lawyer while cleaning.
I'm so sorry, sir.
The man turned towards her angrily. Her dirty cleaning water had stained his white trousers. Once he looked at her face, his expression turned to surprise and then back to anger.
Mrs. Peekaboo?
I'm sorry, sir. Do I know you?
Do you know me?
He laughed.
Where's your daughter, Peekaboo Jr.?
Me! I ran towards him and he lifted me up. Mr. Samaritan! I remembered, hugging him.
Wow, you've grown so big, P. Jr. How old are you now?
10. My mother's eyes widened when she finally recognized him.
Oh my God, Mr. Samaritan.
He hugged her too and she burst into tears. Mr. Samaritan was one of Dad's oldest friends. He had an accident around the same time my dad suffered the stroke attack, so he was admitted and out of it during the burial. When we started living on the streets, we sold all our gadgets to survive and no one could contact us anymore.
Can you tell me why you're cleaning floors?
He asked my mom angrily. My mom just shook her head, tears streaming down her face.
Didn't your husband leave you anything? Pack you and PJ Jr.'s bags immediately and follow me. You know what? Just leave them. Leave them where they are. I'll have them thrown out. Follow me.
If you think anything is going to happen between Mr. Samaritan and my mom, tell us in the comments below. Like and subscribe if you are enjoying the story so far.
What about my boss? I have to resign respectfully.
He is my friend. I'll talk to him and thank him for his help. Don't worry about that.
Mr. Samaritan literally dragged us into his limo. He gave my mom a job in his company and a house in his workers' quarters. I was also enrolled in a great school immediately, and somehow I was able to catch up to my grade mates because I'd been reading so much. It turned out that Mr. Samaritan's wife had also died a few years ago due to some kind of heart disease, and this was around the same time that my father died. My mom and Mr. Samaritan had similar experiences, so they had a lot to bond over, and sooner rather than later, they fell in love and got married. When it was time for their honeymoon, I was told that it was my duty to babysit my new stepsister, Happy. Happy never liked me, no matter how hard I tried. I decided to stop trying, and we just never spoke anymore. I was freaked out that they expected me to babysit that nuisance, so in secret, I decided to hire a nanny that would do the babysitting for me once my parents were gone. Somehow, though, my mom figured out what I was up to and stopped me. She explained that this was my time to bond with Happy, and I should make good use of it because Happy would be my sister forever. Although the thought of having Happy as a sister forever brought chills down my spine, I decided to give it a shot. Maybe she wasn't that bad after all. I was wrong. She was the worst. Do you know what this human did? She cut her own hair and burnt all her clothes. She set the house on fire and broke her own nose. News got to my mom and my stepdad, so they had to cancel the honeymoon and rush back home immediately. I explained that I didn't even touch Happy for a second, but Happy kept screaming that I was the evil witch who burned down her closet, cut her hair while she was sleeping, and broke her nose because she refused to give me her allowance. What? Mr. Samaritan took my side and said he believed me. He knew his daughter well enough to know when she was just throwing a tantrum. He angrily made the decision to send Happy to boarding school for being such a nuisance, but I pleaded for her and he accepted. I guess this made Happy feel guilty because she started being kind to me and somehow we became friends. We all lived happily for 2 years until things started changing. My school went for an excursion in Paris. While we were walking on the road, I thought I saw my dad for a second, but I knew that it wasn't possible. When we entered the art gallery, I saw him again, clear as day. So I walked up to him and tugged on his shirt a little. Dad? I saw how the expressions changed on his face. From recognition to pain, to utter disbelief to anger, and then to pretense. I knew he was my dad, and I knew I recognized him. I may have been just 12, but I definitely wasn't stupid.
I'm sorry, but I think you may be mistaking me for someone else, kiddo. I'm not your dad.
He quickly walked off, but not before I took some pictures of him with my camera. Kiddo. I tried figuring out why that word gave me goosebumps. It reminded me of my dad. Only my dad called me kiddo. It was him. He was alive. I left the excursion and followed him into an alleyway where he started arguing with a strange woman in French. Click, click. I took more photos of them, but they noticed me and started chasing me. I ran straight into some thugs, and the thugs tried to kidnap me, but my dad quickly saved me by beating them up as I ran away. When I got to the art studio, they were already leaving. I ran towards the school bus, and luckily the people on the street noticed me and started shouting for the bus to stop. Seeing that I was screaming and running towards it, the bus stopped, and I was glad that I was safe. As I looked at the road from the back of the bus, I saw my dad standing and staring at me. I waved goodbye and he waved back before turning and walking away. When I got home, I didn't tell anyone what happened to Paris. A couple of weeks later, Mr. Samaritan's supposedly dead wife walked right through the front door and announced,
I'm back.
She was surprised to see me and my mother in the house, so she asked,
Who are you? And what are you doing in my house?
before fainting. We called our family doctor to examine her, and he said that she was perfectly fine. When she woke up, she claimed that she had amnesia and couldn't remember anything that had happened for the past 7 years after her supposed death. My mom, who was unnecessarily kind, decided to let their former Mrs. Samaritan stay in the same house with us. I warned her, explaining that this was a bad idea, but she simply shunned me, telling me to think less about myself sometimes and more of other people, like my stepsister Happy. Happy was elated when she realized that her mother was alive after all. I agreed to let her mother stay with us when I saw how happy it made her. One day at dinner, the sad topic of my dead dad came up. My stepdad talked about how great my dad was. According to him, my dad was selfless, resourceful, kind-hearted, and the best man he ever encountered. This made his former wife burst into laughter. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. I just remembered something funny. So sorry for interrupting. I'll just be in my room upstairs. Happy's mother's reaction to her ex-husband praising my dad was questionable, so I finally decided to tell my parents about what happened in Paris. I went to my secret spot in my room to get my camera, but to my surprise, it was empty. My camera had been stolen. I knew exactly who was responsible for this. Before I could confront her, my room door opened and she walked in.
Oh, what are you looking for, sweetie?
You know exactly what I'm looking for because you took it. Where's my camera? She just laughed. That's why you came here, isn't it? My dad sent you to get rid of the pictures? Why? Why did you both fake your deaths and disappear, leaving your children and partners behind? Why?
Because we were in love, you fool. And everything was fine until you came to Paris and saw us, spoiling everything. I should have you beaten right now,
she said as she came closer to me. What about Happy? What about me?
Who cares about you two? One parent was enough. Whatever. I've gotten what I came for, so I can leave,
she said as she bounced towards the door. To her surprise, immediately she opened the door, my mom gave her a terrible slap, subsequently jumping on her, making them get into a scuffle. Happy just stood there crying. Mr. Samaritan managed to separate the two women. He made his ex-wife sign divorce papers to make his marriage to my mother legal. Seeing how angry everyone was, she signed the papers. After this, he sent her out of the house and told her to never return. We were all saddened by the realization. Everyone was visibly hurt. Neither my dad nor Happy's mother died. They both faked their death and ran away together. She left her husband, who loved her so much, and her newborn daughter Happy all alone. She didn't even care till this very day. My dad's actions were much worse. All this time we were suffering, living on the streets, eating scraps. cleaning after other people, and he was living his best life in Paris. He didn't bother leaving anything for us before he eloped. He just left, not caring about how we'd survive. We all sat at the dining table, lost in thought. Me and Happy's eyes locked for a second, and it was like we were thinking the same thing. What did we do to deserve such hate and hurt?
I think we should watch a movie.
Mr. Samaritan suggested, and we all agreed. He played The Fault in Our Stars, and we watched it while eating popcorn, pizza, and ice cream. We cried profusely, but deep down we knew that we weren't crying because of the movie. We were just letting the hurt out. A few days later, we got a mail package from Paris. It contained 3 letters of apology written by my dad. One for Mr. Samaritan, one for Mom, and one for me. Attached to me and Mom's letters were checks of $500 million each. Hearing from him made me cry even more. After some time, we were finally able to get over the pain, realizing that we didn't need these people anymore. They'd not been a part of our lives for 7 whole years, and we'd been happy. We had a new family now, and we loved each other more than anything else in the world. The experience brought our family together. Happy and I got closer, and the love bond between Mr. Samaritan and my mom grew stronger. Remember that you are worthy of love. It doesn't matter what you've gone through or who has hurt you in the past. You can still find love, happiness, and friendship again. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to our channel, turn on post notifications, and tell us if you've ever been hurt by someone you loved in the past, including how you got over it. You might be helping a random stranger out.